Welcome back, everyone. I'm so happy that you're here with me again this week because today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. We are not going to be talking about a framework or necessarily mindset. We are going to be doing some practical work today. And this is work that I do with my clients all the time. So we are going to be running an energy audit on your business. And I want you to do it along with me, which means if you are driving, please press pause and come back to this podcast later. You also are going to probably want to grab yourself a notebook because I have some questions that I would like for you to answer. So this energy audit is going to take you probably about 15 minutes because there are 4 questions that I'm going to have you answer. But I do have one rule that I'm going to ask you to follow. And that is when you are writing down your answers, you must write down the very first answer that comes to your mind, not on the one that you land at after you've thought it through for 5 minutes. I want you to capture the first one. So again, if you are not somewhere that you can complete this in real time, like if you are driving or maybe even out on a walk, please pause this episode and come back to it later. Because the rule of working with your first answer matters way more than anything else I'm going to say today, and I'm going to explain why in just a minute. So, why do I want you to do this energy audit? I want to start here with the word audit because I know that word can feel very corporate, very analytical, and what I'm talking about is actually quite the opposite of that. An energy audit is not about tracking your time or figuring out where your hours went. It is about identifying what is quietly draining you. We're going to be looking for the things that aren't loud and obvious, but they are things that you carry around with you every single day. Because here's what I know about the entrepreneurs that I work with. They are often operating at a significant energy deficit and they do not fully see it. They're getting things done and they're showing up, but underneath it all, there is a low hum of things that they're not dealing with, decisions that they haven't made, solutions that they keep tolerating, work that costs them more than it should. And that hum is very expensive, even when it's quiet. And this audit that you're going to do today is going to make all of that visible to you. So what happens when you don't look for these energy leaks in your business? Well, I want to spend a minute here before we get to the questions because I think most people underestimate what sustained energy drain actually does to them. It does not usually show up in a crisis. That's the thing. If it showed up in a crisis, you'd be able to deal with it, right? It shows up as something much subtler and much more dangerous for the long-term success of your business and your happiness as a business owner. It shows up as a general sense of heaviness that you cannot quite explain. You're doing all the things, you're keeping your commitments, but something feels off and you can't name it. So you just keep adding more to your plate, or you push harder, or you convince yourself that you just need a good weekend to reset. And then Monday comes around and that heaviness is still there. When someone is carrying unaddressed energy drains, the dread that they're not dealing with, the decisions they keep circling, the things that they keep coming back to that are unresolved, it affects everything downstream. Their decision making slows down because they're using a portion of their cognitive and emotional capacity just to manage the weight of what they haven't looked at yet. Every conversation they have, every plan they make, every goal they set, it's all happening with a depleted engine. And here's the part that is hardest to see from the inside. When you are operating that way long enough, that starts to become your norm. It starts to feel normal, and you forget what it feels like to have full access to your own energy and attention. You assume this is just what running a business feels like. It's not. What running a business feels like when you're not dragging unresolved weight behind you is much different. Your decisions come faster. Your momentum feels less forced, and the work that actually matters gets more of you. Your focus, your presence, your energy, all of it, not the leftovers. And you cannot get there by working harder. You can only get there by getting honest, which is what this audit is for. So We're going to dive into those questions, but one more thing, I want to talk to you about that rule that I told you about at the beginning of the show. Because I think this is where most of my listeners are going to want to cheat. And I don't mean that in a really harsh way. I mean, that is what your brain is going to want to help you with. It's going to want to help you come up with a deep answer because as an entrepreneur, you do a lot of deep thinking. You're going to ask yourself the first question and your brain is going to generate an answer. And then almost immediately, it's going to say, well, but that's not really the problem, or that's not a big deal, or I've already thought about that. I'm probably just overthinking it. And then it's going to offer you a second answer, a tidier one that doesn't feel as uncomfortable to look at. That second answer, it is not wrong, but it is not the one that this audit is built for. The first answer, the one that came up before your brain had a chance to manage it, this is the one that we're after. And when you notice it, I want you to write it down. Even if it surprises you or seems too simple or too big or, let's admit it, too embarrassing to name out loud. I've found that the first answer is almost always the real one, the one that matters the most. So grab your notebook and let's dive into those 4 questions. And as I read each of these questions to you, I want you to press pause right after and write down the first thought that comes to your mind. And then when you're done doing that, press play again. All right, question number 1. What am I dreading right now? What am I dreading right now? Press pause and write down your answer. Okay, question number 2. What decision have I been putting off? What decision have I been putting off? Press pause and write down your first answer. Question number 3. What issue keeps coming back unresolved? What issue keeps coming back unresolved? Press pause and write down your answer. And question number 4, last question. What in my business requires more from me than it gives? What in my business requires more from me than it gives? Press pause and then write down your answer and come on back. All right, so we've just gone over the 4 questions in the energy audit, and I hope that you really were able to grab that first thought answer, because now I'm going to tell you what to do with what you find. And I want to be clear about something before we begin. This audit is not a to-do list for you. You are not walking out of this episode with 4 more action items. This is not the point. The point is to stop pretending that those things that you just wrote down aren't costing you anything, because that's what happens when we don't name them. They don't disappear. They stay in the background, pulling our attention and our energy and our decision-making in ways that we don't always notice. We might move a little slower. We might hesitate a little more. We might stay busier than we need to be. And we wonder why we can't seem to get traction on the things that actually matter. This audit interrupts all that. It is making the invisible visible. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes just naming the thing is what makes it movable. So take a look at your answers and ask yourself, is this something that I'm ready to move? Because if you are, add it to your priority list and get it out of your attention area. So what comes next? I run a version of this audit with my clients inside the Momentum Room, and I also run it on myself. And what I found every single time is that, like I told you, that first answer is the one that matters. And when we actually look at it, when we stop managing it and start working with it, the path forward almost always becomes clearer than we expected. You do not have to solve everything today, my friend, but you do have to be willing to see it. So if you did this audit while you were listening to this podcast, I want you to sit with what came up. Notice which answer surprised you the most. Which one did you want to skip? Those are the ones that are asking for your most immediate attention. And if you're ready to stop carrying those things alone and start actually working through them, then that's exactly why you should be in the Momentum Room. We do this kind of work every week, making the invisible visible, building the self-trust to act on it, and staying accountable to the follow-through. I hope you enjoyed doing this audit this week. You can learn more about the Momentum Room on my website, jenlafine.com/TMR. I hope you have an amazing week, and I'll see you right back here again next week.